Hello, my friends, and welcome to a brand new episode of Discourse in Magic. My name is Jonah Babbins, and in this episode, I was featured on another podcast. That's right, it is podcast season. Everyone's stuck inside their house, which means everyone is launching wonderful podcasts, and I'm so excited to be on them. So if you have a podcast, invite me. I would love to be featured on. And this episode, I was on the Better Business with Magic podcast from Nolan Webster. And this is a real interesting concept for a podcast because it's not actually for magicians. It's for people in business taking advice from magicians. So this was an exciting and interesting conversation and allowed me to talk about things that I don't usually get to talk about. And I didn't include the full episode, but I included a short 10-minute snippet so you can hear me trying to advise business with lessons from magic. I talk about math, I talk about magic, and I talk about the secret to sales and magic. I'll give you a hint. The answer is iteration. So I think you're going to love this short little episode. If you like it, definitely go check out the full thing on Better Business with Magic podcast. And before the episode starts, I just want to remind you that this Sunday is Unconventional.fun, our one-day virtual magic convention in 8-bit world. And I really, really hope to see you there because it's going to be crazy. Until then, enjoy this wonderful episode with Nolan Webster on the Better Business with Magic podcast. Enjoy.
So you've done a lot with student youth and leadership organizations. You have a background in mathematics. So I'm really curious, how does the background in mathematics help you out in magic?
You know, it's funny. I was featured on another podcast. It's a podcast called Math Therapy, and it's with a math tutor. And we actually spoke about this. And one of the things that we talked about is, you know, math helps you in many, many different ways. Like everything, you know, we all maybe we went to school for whatever it is that we do, and now we do something completely different. You know, that's a common theme in the world. So I think we take from things what we want. So for me, there's a lot of things that overlap math and magic in terms of problem solving. Like by way of math, it's hard to, I mean, anybody who's done math at a university level understands that there's actually a little bit of a creative nature to math. It's not it is cut and dry. You're searching for an answer, but how you go about getting that answer is the ingenuity and is the creativity. And it's the same thing in building a magic trick. So that's the first major thing that I find is the problem solving on the magic end of it. But the other one, and this to me is the biggest, is math is to me just association of concepts. So you understand A, you understand that A implies B, so now you understand B. And we keep moving forward and we build on that. And that is teaching. If you've ever taught in any environment, one-on-one, in a class, online, in any way, you have to make sure someone understands one concept before you move to the next. And you have to make sure the concepts are simple enough that people can follow along. And in magic, it's the same thing. If at any point in time somebody is confused with anything that you do, any step, any moment, any action, then you lose it. You lose the trick. And especially, and the way I describe it in math versus magic is in math, you learn A implies B, B implies C, and C implies D. You say, amazing, wonderful, and you go home happy. In magic, you say A implies B, B implies C, C implies D. And that idea that A implies D is a paradox. And it's because one of those things I said was a lie. So I'll give an example. You see this card. I put this card in the middle of the deck. I wave my hand. The card is on the top of the deck. If there's any confusion about any of those steps, there's no magic. Like if the first step, if I say, oh, see this card, and you don't really see the card, then it's not really magic. If I put it in the deck, but you don't really see me put it in the deck, you know, it's not magic. If you don't see the card on top, it's not magic. But one of those steps is actually a lie. It's a bluff. One of them. I don't know which one, right? Maybe it's the first, maybe the second. One of them is a lie. So to me, the big overlap between math and magic is they're both about teaching, step-by-step teaching and explaining, making sure that someone can follow along in your verbal or physical step-by-step procedure. And the only difference is in magic, one of those steps, we pull a fast one on them. That's literally the only difference.
Do you use those concepts whenever you're consulting and advising other people and leaders and that nature?
I mean, there's a lot of things that come over from the world of math that certainly help me. So one thing is, in math, it's really important before you start trying to solve problems or anything like that you define what you're looking for, that you define your terms. What does this mean? What does this mean? Like, okay, if we're going to try to use this to do so-and-so, what exactly does that mean? And I find that concept of, just making sure that I can plan, like math has helped me plan and problem solve and execute, in order for me to see where I have to go in 10 steps and execute. For when someone asks me a question about, here's a silly question. This is a little bit off tangent, but you'll understand why. When non-magicians ask me about magic, a common question they'll say is what you do magic or illusions? The answer that I have for them, and I don't mean to go and spin it back on them, is I say, happy to help. What do those words mean for you? And that ends up starting a much more interesting conversation about, I think illusion is that it's not actually happening, but magic is that it is actually happening. I say, well, if that's how you define it, then everything I do is an illusion. Because I'm not actually like a witch, right? It's just, it's trickery. But maybe some people think illusion is more like an optical illusion. So this is an example to say that to pull off something in working with people, in any small, long-term projects, the thing that math helps with, aside from an ability to work with numbers and not being fearful of numbers, but the thing that math allows is problem solving, is beginning with the end in mind, is defining the terms that you're using, understanding where you're going, and all of those different organizational things that, like procedural organizational things that really, really help in the planning process.
Now in math, you do a lot of, A then gets you to B, which then gets you to C. But sometimes in magic and in business, we have the end idea first. We have this idea of either a trick that we want to do, or we have this business idea that we want to execute. So how do we backwards plan while still using those concepts of math to like get from A to B when we're not even sure what A is yet?
Cool. So I'm going to talk about, maybe I'll talk about two different aspects of this, okay? Because I want to talk about the business aspect of it, and then I want to talk about the math and magic aspect of it, okay? So the business aspect of it, this is something that I learned from my mentors in business, on podcasts, on, like the Pat Flynn's of the world, the Noah Kagans of the world, the, Tim Ferriss's of the world. I learned this from them, and then I made the mistake again myself over and over and over again. And now until I've learned it the hard way, okay? So the business lesson is this. It is now 2020. The internet is a ridiculous place where you can get in contact with potential target customers before you make the thing. And the biggest mistake in 2020 that people had to do in 1960, but they don't have to do now, is now you can make sure that people actually are willing to give you money for the thing that you want to make before you make it. Okay? It's called validation, product validation, So I know that that's a little bit, probably not what you were expecting me to talk about, because I'm going to talk a little bit about magic in a second, but I know that there's people that are listening to this that are going to be doing business, and the thing that hurts the least is to hide in your cave, work on your project, don't tell anyone, and then when it's ready, tell everyone that it's ready. That's what is the least emotionally painful, but it is also the least possibly successful. Like, it is the worst strategy ever. A way better strategy is to find the people that are interested, tell them about the project, see if they want to support it financially, and so and iterate. So that's my business bit of advice. My other piece of advice comes from the world of magic. And I'm going to kind of use this to talk about sales and to talk about a few different things. But as a magician, what happens is you go out on stage and you do the set, you do the performance. And then there's a whole bunch of stuff that's good and a whole bunch of stuff that's bad. And then you go forward and you do it again. And you keep the good stuff and you ditch the bad stuff. And over and over and over and over and over. And more so When you do that, let's say you bring an audience up on stage and you ask him a question at a moment in time. Okay, so I've been doing this trick now for a year. I have asked this question now, let's say 350 times. People only give one of 5 answers. Like if I say, where do you think the ball is? In my hand or under the cup? Like I know what they're going to say. They're going to say in my hand, they're going to say under the cup, or they're going to say some silly joke, ridiculous thing about it, right? So what happens now is, let's fast forward 3 years later, I'm in a live situation and someone says something off the cuff about the magic trick, and then I respond in instant timing with a rebuttal that is equally as brilliant. Okay? I'll give you an example. I have a trick where I'm holding a deck of cards and I tell someone to name a card. So someone says like the 4 of spades. And then I tell someone else to guess exactly where the card is. So I say, what position in the deck is the 4 of spades? Is it number 12? Is it number 15? Is it number 38? Where is it? And then the person looks at me and they shrug their shoulders and they go, in the middle. Like that. And then I say, hold this. And they hold it. And I reach in my pocket and I unfold a piece of paper. And in giant quotes, it says, in the middle. And people go crazy. And I actually did this. This is an actual real thing that I did. And I know because over and over and over again, people would say in the middle. It was just what came to them. And with that, I was able to figure out what my best joke, best line, best strategy is. And that's the same way that things in sales work, right? You know how to respond to people's objections because you've responded to them before, because you've learned what objection responses work and which ones don't work. Same thing with product iteration and a product growing. You know what parts of your product people love, and you know what parts of your product people really, really don't like. And you figure that out by talking to them over and over and over again, and by hearing their responses over and over and over again, and then you know which parts of your product and project people want and which parts of your product and project people don't like and you should ditch. So think like a magician in the sense of you come out, you throw it at the wall, some sticks, some doesn't. You work with the stuff that sticks. You listen to your audience. You listen to what people are saying, and you iterate again. Well, there you go. I hope you liked the episode, and I hope, of course, that you learned something. As I said, if you liked the content of this, definitely go check out the Better Business with Magic podcast with Nolan Webster. I think it's such an interesting concept for a podcast, and I'm very intrigued to see where it goes. And as I mentioned before, I'll say it once and I'll say it again. In just a few days, September 27th, 9 a.m. to 10 p.m. is Unconventional.fun, our one-day virtual magic convention happening in an 8-bit video game world. I am so excited. My character is ready. I'm ready to go and learn and jam all day long. I'll see you guys there. Peace!